Hi everyone! I've never been one to make mini albums or mini scrapbooks, but I do love a set of note cards, so I decided to combine the two and make a set of note cards in the form of a mini book. The project does have a lot of steps, but I think you'll be really happy with the results. I've even got a tutorial on making your own packaging. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do to make the note card book is to start with the pages. And the size of the note card book is, I believe, A1 sized. So the note cards that I'm using, they're flat note cards, and they measure 5.5 by 3.5. And typically an A1 note card is 5 by 3.5. But the reason for the extra ½ inch is so that I can score. So I'm going to score at the ½ inch mark on each of these flat note cards that I've already cut. Okay, all of the note cards are scored. I've got 12 of them here for the set. And before I put away my scoreboard, I'm going to bring it out later, but before I put it away this time, I want to measure the thickness because that's going to be an important measurement for this project. So I'm just going to use the marks on my scoreboard to get a general idea. And this thickness of note cards measures 1/4 inch across, so we'll want to remember that when we start to bind the note card book. So I'm going to put away the scoreboard for now. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp my cards. I'm going to stamp the design that I'm going to have on each one, and since I'm going with kind of a summery fruit theme, I'm going to stamp each one. And to do that, when I use a background stamp on any card, I take a piece of fun foam and place it underneath. And I'll put a piece of paper on top so I don't stamp onto it. But the foam acts as kind of a pad that gives me some good cushion and helps me get a good impression. I'm going to use an assortment of inks from Impress Fresh Ink, and I love these inks. They are wonderful. So let me get started. I'm going to start with this yellow color. I'll do this. One down. I'm going to keep going and stamp the rest, and I'll show you the backgrounds before I stamp any images so you can get an idea of the colors that I chose to use. So stamping is all done. I've got an assortment of pastels here that will work nicely when I want to stamp over them, and I did, for each color, I stamped 3 of the same card. So that in the set there'll be 3 of each image and 3 of each kind of card. So I can take this away now, and for the cards I'm going to use the Paper Tray Ink Fruit Fusion. I'm pretty sure that's the name of these mini sets, and I'm going to stamp a little fruit image on each one and a cute sentiment. So I'll do the first one on camera, but I will spare you the excitement of watching me stamp 12 cards. I'm sure that you would be beside yourself with excitement to see that, but I'll save that for another day. I'm going to use the strawberry image on the pink gingham, kind of stamp it off center a little bit. And since I'm doing 3, I might as well just do an assembly line so that I don't have to pull this stamp out again. So we got 3 strawberries. Done with that one. And then we'll stamp the stem with, I believe this is basil, one of my favorite greens from Impress. It's a great green color. And stamp that strawberry leaf right there. That one wasn't so perfect, but that's how you know it's homemade, when it's not perfect. You don't want people thinking you went and bought these. So you gotta make it a little ugly. There we go, that one looks really good. Okay, strawberries are stamped. Now I'm gonna add a sentiment from that same set, and I think I'm gonna go with the Your Berry Sweet one. And that I'm just going to stamp in black ink with the berry part of the sentiment stamped in a color. And as you can see, these go pretty quickly once you get a little assembly line going. It doesn't take long to stamp them out. And then with the berry, I think I'll use the red again. And this color is called strawberry. A really good red. It's not like a true red. It's kind of a, well, it's a strawberry red. That's why it's called that. Stick that in between. It's coming together. I love it. Okay, those three are done. And I'm going to stamp the rest of the fruit. I'll show you what they all look like when I'm finished. I've just finished stamping the last of the images, which is a watermelon. And so my last thing to do is to stamp a little sentiment on the bottom of that. And I'm going to go with, I think I'm going to do "You're one in a melon." That's fun. And I'm actually going to start with stamping the piece that's farthest to the right so that I know I have enough room for that. I'm going to stamp that in red, or the strawberry color. And then stamp the other portion of the sentiment in black. This project has a lot of steps, but sometimes it's nice to do something that's kind of involved. Gives you something to be proud of when you're finished. So I'm all done stamping each page. So I have watermelons, I have grapes that say "Thanks a bunch," I have cherries that say "Hi sweetie," and then of course those strawberries that say "You're very sweet." So we have our set of 4 cards that are going to go into the notebook. The next thing that I'm going to do for these note cards is I'm going to punch a hole, 2 holes in what will end up being the spine, because I want to, at the end of the project, put some twine through there just for kind of a decorative look. And in order to punch those holes exactly in the same place every time, I'm going to do a step that might seem a little, you know, it's an extra step and it does take some time, but for me it's worth it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a strip of black paper that is the exact measurement of this spine, which I know to be, it's a 1/2 inch by 3 1/2, since I scored it at a 1/2 inch earlier, and I know that the cards are 3 1/2 inches in height. So I'm going to cut a piece of paper that is a 1/2 inch by 3 1/2. So it's the exact measurement of that spine. So this little strip here is what I need. Then I'm going to take my crocodile and I'm going to use actually the smaller side, and I'm going to just punch 2 holes in it where I would want those holes to be in my book. So about 1/3 of the way in on both sides. This now is going to be my kind of my template for placing the holes. And so for each one of these 12 cards, I'm going to place the template over that spine edge and just use a pen, I'm just using a ballpoint pen, to draw in circles where that needs to be punched. And then I will again take the crocodile, or any hole puncher would be fine. You want to clear out that center part so you can see where you're punching. And I'm going to punch right where I drew that circle. And that's going to give you a hole, you know, because that's what hole punchers do. And then when I do that for each of these cards, it's going to be in the same place. So then when I stack them on top of each other, I'll be able to run a piece of twine through. So I'm going to just go through, mark each one, and then punch a hole through each one. You'll want to save your template because we're going to use it again when we make the cover for this book. Alright, I'm just about done punching these holes. I have just 1 stack, and I'm actually punching them. Since the crocodile can handle quite a few pieces of paper at once, I'm able to punch 3 at once without losing, you know, anything sliding or getting out of place. So all those holes are punched, and like I said, it is an extra step, but I think it's well worth it. Now, the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere score tape to each page, and I have, let's see, I believe this is 1/4 inch score tape, and I'm just going to go through each page and adhere it along the length of that spine. And you don't need to worry about it going over your holes. It's not that big of a deal. Once you take the score tape off, you'll be able to kind of push through that adhesive without a problem. So it's not going to get in your way. I've got adhesive on each of the cards now, and this way when it comes time to assemble, I'll be able to adhere each of the pages together. But now is probably the most crucial step in this book, which makes it functional. I'm going to perforate the cards down that score line that I made earlier. It's going to act now as a guide for perforation. The way I perforate things is with my sewing machine. I just take out any thread, I take out the bobbin thread, and I take out the thread through the needle and just use the needle and sew down that score line. And as long as you have your stitch length not too short, because if it's too short or too small, it will just rip the paper through. Mine is set on a 3, and that works pretty well for perforating it and requiring the person to, you know, kind of pull and then rip it out. So I'm going to go do that, and I'll be back and I'll show you what it looks like when they're all perforated. I'm all done perforating the cards. You can see here that there's little dots all the way down the edge, and that's where it'll be easy to rip them. You don't really need to bend them or anything because it'll be easy to tear them off once you want to use them. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and adhere each of these cards to each other, except for the one on top. You can leave the one on top, you can leave that score tape untouched. But for the rest of them, I'm going to kind of make the book now and peel off each piece of score tape and carefully line up each card to the other. Score tape is great for this type of project because it is so sticky. These things aren't going to go anywhere once they are stuck together. You could, of course, use another type of adhesive. I just find that score tape or this type of adhesive is just really sticky, and that's why you got to be careful when you line them up, because once they're in, they're not going anywhere. So I'll keep doing this and come back to show you what it looks like when they're all together. I just adhered the last page, and the book pages are done now. As you can see, they are stuck together and they flip nicely, and the perforations are there so that when you do want to use them, you just tear them right out. Next part of this project is to make the cover. And the cover is kind of fun because that's when you get to be a little creative and design a fun cover for your book. To make the spine of this book, to make something that's kind of sturdy, I'm using a piece of chipboard that I've already cut to size, and the size of it is 3.5, because that's the height of the book. And then to go around the edge, I measured out what it needed to be, and that is 1.75 inches. And I'll explain to you why it needs to be 1.75 inches. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp, though, this chipboard, and I'm leaving the chipboard as is. I'm not going to cover it with anything, but I am going to stamp it with a pattern that I think will just kind of add a little something to the project. I'm going to use the Background Basics Gingham from Paper Tray Ink along with the Craft, oh, if I can get it open, the Classic Craft Dye Ink. This Classic Craft, I think, is one of 2 dye inks that I own from Paper Tray Ink, but this color I use all the time. So if you're wondering what colors to get, this I find is a unique one that isn't something I already own with my other inks. So I'm going to stamp directly onto the chipboard, give it some pressure because I really want that impression to be there. Looks good. It's a little blotchy, but that's okay. Doesn't need to be perfect. Because I'm going to score this, and by the time I score it, you're not going to really notice many of the imperfections. So that's stamped. And now I'm going to score it so that it can wrap easily around the book. And if you'll remember, I did measure the width of the book, and it's 1/4 of an inch. So I need the middle portion of the spine to be 1/4 of an inch. And using my Martha Stewart scoreboard, it's really easy to find the center. You just need to, let's see, there we go. That's the center. And you can see it says center there, and that helps you figure out where the center is. So on either side of that center line, I'm going to score, and that's going to give me 1/4 inch seam, or 1/4 inch spine for this book. So we've got the main portion of the book's spine scored, but now I want to score 1/4 inch from each edge as well. And that is because I do need little flaps where I can tuck in the book and allow it to the pages to turn as well. So I'm scoring 1/4 inch from each edge, and so you may not be able to see those score lines very well, but once I fold it, you will. So this is there we go, the spine. And so it's just kind of that craft gives it a little bit of texture, but it really is just kind of a rustic looking spine. And I'm going to take back that template that I made, and I'm going to need to put holes in this as well, because this is going to be punched in the same places where the other where the pages are punched. So in order to make that work, we got to punch holes there. Same technique as before. Grab my Crop-A-Dile and punch those holes right where I marked them. This really ensures that everything is going to line up perfectly, because the last thing you want to do is go through all of this work and then find out that these holes don't line up. You probably won't be very happy about that. So there we go. The spine is just like that. Perfect. And now I'm going to create a wraparound cover for this book. So it's going to go from the back to the front, and as you can see, that 1/4 inch flap I left is so that this cover can tuck right under there, and so you can easily open it and close it. Right now it's just a plain white piece of paper, and I should tell you that the measurements for it, for this particular book, and of course you can figure out your own measurements for a different size, but this is a 3.5 inches by 10 3/4. So I just chopped off 1/4 inch off that sheet of paper, and I scored it made 2 scores to measure 1/4 inch here, and this portion measures the full 5.5, and then this is a bit shorter. I'll include some more directions to make that a little more clear, but hopefully that makes some sense. So now I'm just going to stamp the cover to make it, you know, pretty. And to do that, I'm pulling out one of my favorite background sets from Paper Tray Ink, tin types, Background Basics tin types. This background I like because you can stamp it and then you can stamp over it, and it almost makes it look like it's a pattern paper. So I'm going to go ahead and start stamping my design for the cover, and I'll be back to show you kind of as it's partially done. I just finished stamping the background onto this paper, and as you can see by all this mess of paper or mess of stamps on my sheet, that I did stamp off before I stamped onto the cover. That's to make it a little bit lighter, so that when I stamp my other design, they don't compete with each other too much and get too busy. So for the design of the cover, I'm using the cherries again to bring that theme of the fruits out onto the cover. And I'm going to actually, this will end up being, let's see, let me check. This is the back, and then it wraps around. So this is the front, the shorter side is the front. And I want the cherries to kind of be on this side, so I'll keep that in mind as I'm stamping. My cherry part of my cover is all stamped, and so the last thing I'm going to do is stamp kind of a label, I guess, onto the front. And it's going to say, Sweet Note Card Set. And to do, uh-oh, the T fell off. That's no good. Get that back there. To stamp the that portion, I've used Paper Tray Ink's Fresh Alphabet to spell out the word note card. So I'm going to stamp that first, since that's kind of the anchor of the front of the note card set. Stamp that in black ink. And then for the sweet part of the label, I'm going to use the Sweet on You sentiment from the Fruit Fusions cherry set, but I'm only going to ink up the sweet part, the word sweet. So that's the only part I want. So I'm going to selectively ink that and rub off. I just use my finger usually, but I'm worried that I might make a mess. So I just use a baby wipe to wipe off any ink that may have gotten on the other words. And it looks like I did a pretty good job, but we'll just make sure. Okay, so everything else is clean except for that sweet word. And I'm going to stamp it right above. Awesome. Sweet note card. And then for the word set, I'm using the simple alphabet from PTI and making that word a little smaller. So there we go. Sweet note card set. And really, at this point, the cover is all finished. I just need to adhere all of these parts together and we'll be done. So to adhere the spine to the pages, I'm going to put another piece of score tape down the back. And for some extra insurance, because I really want to make sure that all my hard work was for a good reason, I'm going to take some glue, and I like to use, this is Eileen's tacky glue. I feel like I've been using this stuff for ages, and my bottle's a little empty. I'm going to take the glue and just put a nice thin coat down the edge of the spine, as well as inside the edge of the chipboard piece. So this way, really, this thing is not going to come apart at all. It is well assembled. Peel off those two pieces of score tape on the front and back, and then place the spine. And actually, you know what, I forgot. That's how you know this is live crafting, because I need to put this cover on first. So I'm okay shape though. So I'm going to put the cover on the long back side first, and it'll stick right to that score tape that I already had there. And then I'm going to put another piece of score tape, because that's where the chipboard's going to adhere. I'm glad I figured that out before I got too far into this. Okay, so that score tape is there. Oh, sometimes this stuff does not want to come apart. There we go. Now I can put the spine on. Lovely. And those holes line up beautifully. So the spine is on, and really that tacky glue, it dries, or it starts working immediately. So you can kind of keep working. You don't need to play around too much or wait for it to dry. And now you can see how this cover just tucks right under there and the flap that's not adhered. And you can bend it up a little bit. That flap also allows you to turn the pages uninterrupted. So we can tuck that under there. And the last thing I'm going to do is put some twine through here to kind of dress it up a little bit. And I'm just going to take my needle and push through. You have to use a little bit of elbow grease for that, but it's not too hard. Pull that twine through, leave a little extra because I'm going to go around a few times. And since those holes are all lined up, you don't really have any problem getting the twine through. let's see, how many times do I want to do this? Twice, 3 times? Twice is good. Let's do twice. And then I'm just going to tie a little bow. Kind of gives it a finished look to this notebook rather than just leaving that spine plain. Tie that bow. And because I'm a little bit neurotic, I'm going to take more glue and dab it onto the center of this bow because it'll dry clear, but I do that because it will make sure the bow does not come undone. It kind of glues it together, but without anyone seeing. So once it's dry, you won't be able to take it apart. Perfect. Alright, so the note card set is all done. I really like the way this turned out. Now I'm going to show you how I packaged this up. It's another fun project that you can do with this note card set or in a totally separate project from this. Alright, let's move to that. For the packaging on this card set, I was really inspired by the paper tray ink. I believe they're called front and back dies, and the idea for them is that there's dies that can be put on either side of a gift bag and kind of create kind of a dressed up gift bag, I guess you could call it. So I don't own those dies, but I love the idea of them, so I decided I would try to figure out how to make it myself. And I think I did a pretty good job coming up with a solution. What I did was take 2 pieces of cardstock, this color is Melon Berry, and cut it to 4 1/4 by about 7 inches high. And then I die cut the edges using the Edgers die. I believe it's Edgers 1 from Paper Tray Ink. I punched out each of the holes to create the lace pattern, and then really all that I have to do is create little handles on the top. And to do that, I'm using a small oval punch from Fiskars and just punching in the center of each piece of paper that I've already die cut. And there you have like little handles. So it works perfectly. To dress up this part of my gift bag, though, I'm not going to just leave it plain. I'm going to give it a little pizzazz with some strips of paper. So I have a strip of paper that I stamped with the Tin Types background basic set, and I'm going to cut a notch from it using that same oval punch so that it will fit right there perfectly. Alright, peel off some score tape from there, and then situate it right there in the center. Great. And then trim off any excess. Okay. Then for a label, I thought it would be fun to kind of bring in some of the fruit theme from the card set that I'm going to put inside. So I first die cut a circle, the scallop circle from Limitless Layers, I think is what it's called, and I die cut the scallop circle and stamped it with green gingham, and then a white circle as well. So for those, I'm just going to take the some score tape and adhere the white circle to the gingham circle first. Simple enough, right? And then I want to stamp a sentiment on the front of this white circle, and for that I'm going to use, oh, this stuff sometimes, there we go. Stick that in place right in the center. And for the sentiment that I'm going to use, I want to use Gracious Vases. Gracious Vases. That is a tongue twister. And there's one in here, oh, here it is. Especially for You is the combination I'm going to use. And for this, I want to curve the sentiment to follow the curve of the circle. So I'm going to bend this clear stamp, which is always nice. When you're bending them, make sure they're clean, because that way they'll cling to the block a little bit better. And I just want to use that curve. That looks good. And I'm going to use brown, the chocolate ink from Impress Fresh Inks, and just stamp along the curve of the circle. Perfect. Then for the second part, so I've got Especially, and then For You is just a tiny little one that I'm just going to stamp straight across like that. Especially For You. for the rest of that label, I'm going to use a cherry that I cut out from that Fruit Fusion set, and I just trimmed it with scissors, and I'm going to adhere it with some dimensional squares. These little guys are perfect for little embellishments like this. So I'll take 3 of those and then stick it onto the front. There we go. Great. Then that will sit right on the front of my front and center. That is what it's called. It's front and center. Oh, it just came to me. Front and center dies. That's what it's called from Paper Tray Ink. This one though is just, you know, Amber's take on a front and center die. So I'm thinking though that I want to add a little bit of ribbon somewhere here, maybe like this. Okay, I don't know, but first let's adhere. What I'll do then is I'll adhere this label with some strips of adhesive, and because I'm bound and determined to use that ribbon, what I think I'm going to do is put the strips on the edge like that, and this way when I adhere it, I have kind of a channel that I can put the ribbon through. And that's nice also because when you give this to someone, they can untie the gift and take the ribbon off, but still leave the rest of it intact. I know lots of times people want to keep the gift as intact as they can. Now I'm going to just adhere this front and center DIY, do it yourself front and center, to a bag that I've, it's just a small paper bag that I've cut a little bit down so it's not so tall, and I'm going to flip this over actually and center that bag so that it's right in the middle of my front and center die. Adhere that one, and then for the back of it I'm just going to leave the melon berry as is. It doesn't need to be, you could certainly put a label on it or something, but I don't think I need to. This bag has a front and a back, so the back will be plain. Come on, there we go. All right, and then just stick this one in place as well. This is a good side. Perfect. Stick that there. And we have the bag all put together, and as you can see in the center, the bag is ready to be filled. Now, because I'm going to use this ribbon, if it's the last thing I do, I just think that green looks really nice. I'm going to push it through that channel that I left with the adhesive. What I think I'm going to do is once I fill this, tie a bow, and I think that'll look nice, kind of a way to seal this up all together. So I'll show you some pictures when I'm all done, and you can see what this all comes out looking like. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me for this long project. I know it was a long one, but I think it's definitely worth it, and hopefully it gives you some ideas for some ways to make a fun note card set and a way to package it. Thanks a lot. Bye.